Nobody told you this part. Nobody said that healing, the real kind, the slow kind, the kind that asks something of you, would sometimes feel like losing them all over again. Not worse than the first time, but different, quieter, more specific. Like you finally understand the exact shape of what's gone. If you're somewhere in that, if you thought you were getting better and then something shifted and the grief came back but changed, this reflection is for you. When you were deep inside it, in the thick of the ending, the loss, the confusion, there was a strange mercy to it. A kind of numbness, the body's way of giving you only what you could hold. You moved through those days the way people move through fog. Not fully feeling, not fully seeing, just continuing. And you told yourself, when this lifts, I'll be okay. When the fog clears, I'll be okay. And then it did. The fog lifted, and underneath it, the full weight of everything you hadn't been able to feel yet. Here is something worth understanding. Grief doesn't always come at the moment of loss. Sometimes it waits. It waits until you're stable enough to hold it. It waits until you have enough ground beneath you to feel the earthquake. The grief that finds you months later or years later is not a sign that you haven't healed. It is a sign that you have healed enough to finally feel what was always there. You are not going backwards. You are, for the first time, going all the way through. In Vietnamese, there is a word for what this particular ache feels like. Nuối, tiếc. It doesn't translate cleanly. It's not quite regret, not quite longing, not quite grief. Nuối, tiếc is a specific feeling of wanting back something you know you cannot have. Not because you haven't accepted it, but because you loved it. And love doesn't disappear simply because the thing itself is gone. Nuối, tiếc is what remains after you've already done the work of letting go. It's the quiet ache of the after. There is no English word for this because the English language hasn't fully accepted that this kind of aching is not the same as not healing. And here is what nuối, tiếc is often reaching for. Not just the person, not just the relationship, not just what was, but what could have been. The version of things that existed only in possibility, the future you had quietly constructed, the life you had begun to imagine, the version of yourself inside that life. That future was real. It lived in you. And when the relationship ended, it didn't just take the person, it took that possible world with it. And nuối, tiếc, the ache that comes later, during healing, is often the grief for that, for the unlived life, for the door that closed. Not because you should have stayed, not because leaving was wrong, but because something that mattered is gone. And it deserves to be mourned properly. I want to say this carefully because it matters. If you are in nuối, tiếc, if the grief has returned, quieter and more specific, if you are mourning not just what was, but what could have been, you are not failing at healing. You are not weak. You have not undone your work. You have not taken steps backward. You are doing something most people never allow themselves to do. You are grieving completely. Most people grieve the surface, the absence, the silence, the empty space. But Nuối tiếc asks you to grieve deeper, to mourn the unlived life, the door that closed, the version of yourself that existed in that possible future. That is not weakness, that is love, doing its full work. So how do you hold Nuối tiếc without being consumed by it? You don't try to argue yourself out of it. You don't remind yourself of all the reasons it was right to let go. You already know those reasons. They are not the point. Instead, you let yourself acknowledge what was true. Something that mattered is no longer here. A possible world no longer exists. A version of yourself that lived in that future will not come to be. And that is a real loss, worth naming, worth sitting with. There's a teaching in Vietnamese Buddhist tradition that says, to understand is the beginning of love. And understanding Nuối tiếc, fully without hurrying past it, is a form of love too. Love for what was real. Love for what almost was. Love for the part of you that had the courage to hope. Healing is not a straight line. It does not move cleanly from pain to peace, from loss to wholeness. It circles back, it deepens, it asks more of you than you expected it to ask. And sometimes, on the days when you thought you were finally past it, it brings you back to a quiet room inside yourself, where Nuối tiếc is still sitting, waiting to be seen. Let it be seen. You don't have to hurry out of it. You don't have to perform recovery for anyone, not even for yourself. You are allowed to mourn completely. You are allowed to love what's gone. You are allowed to grieve not just what was, but what could have been. That is not the opposite of healing. That is what healing, when it goes all the way down, actually feels like. If this reflection touched something in you, there's a story on what remains that sits with this same feeling from the inside. The link is below.